Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, is my good friend Alex Speers on Wednesdays. Alex, what's up?
What's up? Hey,
Hey, hey, hey, it feels like there hasn't been basketball in forever. I was just having coffee with my wife, and she was like, is there gonna be more basketball games? Is that happening?
I know it's been a rough week. I like listen to fewer NBA pods at this time of the year. Like I barely listen to NBA pods right now, just because it's all like finals preview.
Yeah,
It's just like, how much of that can I really consume?
I know. And it's a funny thing because I think people on the outside looking in would assume like, oh, this is such a huge time for NBA podcasts. And like there's like a degree where like, yes, that's true. But it's really just like two fan bases that are completely locked in.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And then like of course, like the casual NBA fan definitely wants to watch the finals, but not everybody's as locked in. And it's why like people are always surprised when I say like the biggest time for NBA podcasts is the draft and free agency, but it's because like all the teams get to jump back in, and like
right.
every fan base gets to be back involved again. Um, so yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of like finals previewed out myself. I still listen to a lot of them, but it's just like yeah, I like we get it. I just want to see it. Like I just want to see it now.
And it's still not tonight. A whole nother day.
Tonight. We still got one more night. Oh, it's a good opportunity to plug this. So throughout the NBA Finals, we are going to have for the Athletic NBA show a post game show with Tim Cato and either Jay King or Jared Weiss after every game. Um, so we'll have like guys that are in the arena that are both beat writers for the teams that they cover, doing a podcast either hosted by me or Dave DeFore. Um, which would be great. And like Dave and I are just going to be there basically to steer the ship and let those guys talk about like what's going on inside both those teams. So pretty unique. I don't know that really anybody else is doing that. So I think it's a really cool opportunity to kind of see like from to hear from like two beat writers of those teams throughout the finals. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to the Athletic NBA show for that. Al, it seems like there's a lot of thundery rumors out there. Some are not rumors at all. Some include the phrase a degree of interest. The Thunder have a degree of interest, which just means absolutely nothing. But there was this one, and then I'll just say this: we're not going to go over every single like little bitty rumor because most of them are not rumors at all. Most of them are just made up by people to get their tweets off. Uh, this one is from Darnell Mayberry. He put this in his piece at the Athletic, where he's talking about like the Bulls off season, and he said this: if the Bulls have seen enough of the Williams experiment, this is Patrick Williams. One team that has great interest, a league source said, is Oklahoma City. The Thunder need more size, and they have an army of draft picks that can sweeten the pot for the Bulls if a sign and trade emerges in July. Al, what are your thoughts on Patrick Williams and like and we can talk about what the odds are of this actually happening, but just thoughts on this rumor and then Patrick Williams.
Yeah, I like you kind of hinted at. This is really the first real rumor we've gotten all season, because like a lot of the other ones, especially the ones that say league executives expect, it's like, who cares? It means nothing.
Yeah,
So yeah, this one feels there's enough here to make you feel like, oh, this maybe has some juice to it. Darnell obviously was a Thunder beat writer at one time. It's not unimaginable to believe that he might still have connections with someone or have some knowledge. Of course, Billy Donovan was the coach. Maybe back when Billy was still coaching, they were talking about Patrick Williams all the time in the hallways.
Could be the case.
Something like that. As for how he could fit, let's start with the good.
Mm-hmm.
He has decent size. He's not huge though, but he has decent size.
215 is what he's listed at on Basketball Reference, which is like he may be 225 or 220 now.
Yeah, solid size. Okay.
Yeah.
he has become a pretty reliable shooter. I mean, even though he doesn't take a high volume, the fact that he has been pretty consistently a good shooter over his 4 seasons in the NBA is encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
You would hope that if he did end up in OKC, that they could get him to take more than 3.5 threes per game. He is versatile defensively. You could see him fitting defensively in OKC's scheme.
Yeah.
So I like that. He's definitely not going to be taking shots from J-Dub and Chet. Pretty low usage player. He's used to being low usage. So I'd say that's another checkbox. And he feels like a position of need. We talked about a player wanting a bigger four. I don't know if he's like the biggest four, but he is a four, and he's played the four a lot, for his entire time in the NBA. Downsides, he is not a good rebounder. And it's hard to definitively say that he's like definitely an awful rebounder, because he has played next to Nikola Vucevic, who gobbles up defensive rebounds, especially.
Sure.
So maybe he'd be a better rebounder in a system next to like Chet, for instance. But it's certainly not a strength of his game, I would say.
Yeah, definitely not.
And then I guess it just comes down. And he also like does not get to the line at all. He's
not an aggressive player.
Yeah, he's just not very dynamic. I would definitely not say Patrick Williams is a dynamic offensive player.
Also, he was awful around the rim this season. And he wasn't as bad the previous season, so maybe this is an outlier, but he was 57% from 0 to 3 feet.
Yeah.
And that's really bad. That's really, really
not
bad.
Great.
He was
64%
last season. His rookie year, he was 67%. So, perhaps, that was an outlier. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, Cleaning the Glass actually has him at 54% for the season, 8th percentile. Now, that's the percentile is because he gets categorized as a big instead of a forward. I mean, 54% still isn't good if you're a forward.
It's very bad.
But yeah, so certainly not a perfect fit, but he is still young. Like he's not even 23 yet.
Yeah, it turns 23 in August.
In fact, is he younger than J-Dub?
Yeah.
Yes, he is. He is younger than J-Dub, which is kind of crazy to think about because he's entering his 5th NBA season.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can still talk yourself into there being a little bit of upside.
Yeah.
I still think of him more as like, okay, you're getting this low usage 3-and-D player playing a position of need. Having a 3-and-D 4 on the Thunder is much more valuable than finding, another 3-and-D 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he does fit for that reason. I'm very interested to see what he's going to get, because I remember going into this season, there were rumors that, he's going to be asking for like 20 to 25 million a year. Apparently the rumors are that he turned down something like 4 for 64, I believe. So that would be like 16 mil per year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think if you got him on a deal that started below 20 million, I think that's great. Like you'd feel great about that, because especially I'm assuming you'd be signing him to like a 4-year deal. By the time that 3rd and 4th year come around, that's going to be a pretty small deal. So like I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
As to the question is, would the Bulls actually move on from him? A team that has not made a trade in 2 years now, legitimately has not made a trade, and apparently are bringing back DeMar DeRozan again. I think the pitch for them moving on is that if they really do bring back DeRozan, the rumor in Darnell Mayberry's article was $40 million a year. They do potentially get to a point where they're getting close to the tax if they can't dump Zach LaVine's contract.
Yeah.
So maybe they would feel some pressure in that scenario to not add another contract that's $20 million per year.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not that unbelievable that they would be willing to do a sign and trade, especially if they got something back. Because the other thing I was looking at is they owe their pick next year to the Spurs. It's top 10 protected, which, by the way, they should be tanking in this scenario. Like, they're not good. They should go try to get Cooper Flag. but doesn't seem like they're going to be doing that.
Oh yeah, no, they won't be doing.
But regardless, like they could use more picks in the future. I think the only incoming pick they have is that weird Blazers pick that is like top 14 protected until the end of time.
Yeah.
That they might never see. So maybe there's something there. All in all, I would say like there's enough here to make me believe, you know what, if that was the move, it wouldn't shock me.
Mhm.
And I can imagine a scenario where it works with Pat Will. Also, apparently his nickname is P Dub and P Will, which would be kind of fun with J Dub and J Will.
And the paw.
And the Paw, also
So,
known as the Paw.
so there's that.
Now, is
Yeah,
that because people were comping him early in his career to Kawhi? And so
probably.
the Paw versus the Claw? Okay.
Probably. Yeah. Those Kawhi Leonard comps don't work out so well. I found.
No, haven't really seen the crazy offensive leap that Kawhi had.
Just because you have cornrows and are really good at defense in college does not mean that you are Kawhi Leonard. Unfortunately.
That would be great if they traded for Kawhi, the young Kawhi.
I mean, listen, Patrick Williams has a ton of potential that's like untapped. He's also had a lot of injuries. You know, he only played 17 games in his second season. He only played 43 games in this past season.
Yeah.
You know, like he had season-ending foot surgery, this year. So like there's injury concerns there with him as well. He also does not do thundery things with regards to like feel for the game, passing, ball handling, like all those things. Like he's just more of a standstill shooter, and he's not a guy that's been good at attacking the hoop. He takes 1.5 free throws per game, as you mentioned. There's just like a lot of also things that if you just think about it, like he doesn't really make sense for the Thunder in a lot of ways. Especially if
last season.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last season was the first time he's had a positive assist to turnover ratio. He's been exactly 1-1 every other year previous.
Yeah, and it's like barely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is there are a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense to me about him. However, I can also still identify that they could really use a guy that makes a corner three and that can defend like him at his size. And so I can't speak definitively that like, oh, this is a real rumor or it's not. Like, I don't know. He has shot well from the corners every year of his career. 42% this past year, 46% the year before, 50% in 21-22 in a limited sample, and then his rookie season was 42%. So he's been good, and I think that you could find a way for him to fit. He just is not a rhythmic player, which makes me question if the Thunder would invest that much into a player that's not considered to be a rhythmic player. But I would like the idea of it, especially on defense, because they just having that extra length and quickness at his height, I think is helpful, because whenever you are being asked to recover to the corners, it's harder for guys like Isaiah Joe and Cason Wallace and Josh Giddey, for that matter, who don't have like the length and quickness of a guy like Patrick Williams to cover that ground. And within this defensive scheme, I think a guy like him would fit very well. And then it comes down to like, are the Thunder willing to, one, invest in a player that is not very rhythmic as an offensive player, and then two, are they willing to have standstill shooters on their team? Because like they just don't have those guys. Like they just have not acquired standstill type shooters. And so I don't know. I am skeptical about this rumor, but I also think that he could help in a lot of ways. And
Yeah, I
like
mean, as we talked about, like that
usage is a huge part of it.
The idea of finding a 4 for this team going forward, it is really hard, like looking around the league to find like the guy who checks every single box. So whoever if they did want to address that position, it's going to be an imperfect player in some way. You're not going to find the perfect 4. So he would definitely be an imperfect version of that, but he also would still bring a lot that they could use. I mean, imagine a closing lineup with like Chet, Patrick Williams, J-Dub, Dort, and Shea. Like that's a pretty interesting defensive lineup
Oh, defensively,
against basically any team, you know?
yeah, it would be awesome defensively. Like he would have helped so much against the Mavs, especially with the defensive matchups, because they had to put Shea on PJ Washington a lot in those
Yeah.
matchups because of the way that everybody had to slide down. Like then you could actually have more size, because it made the Thunder really small in those scenarios. But if you had a bigger forward that could defend like that, it would just put you in a much better position defensively. Then offensively, like if he is nailing corner threes, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
I was talking to John Hamm this morning with regards to like contracts and like the idea of like front loading a contract. Well, you can't really do that anymore. You can only increase or decrease up to 4% of a contract. So if it was like a $20 million contract, you could only increase or decrease it by 800,000 per year. So like you couldn't just like give him like 30 million for this next year and then like bump it back down to like 18 or whatever in year 2.
Yeah. I think one way you could potentially do it is balloon it in the first 2 years and then do a team option in the third, just to see if he would be willing to do it, because they can get away with giving a bigger contract in these first 2 years. I mean, if they were worried long term about the overlap with the next set of contracts they're going to come in,
you could give him 2 years 50.
Yeah.
Basically, and
then have a third year team option.
Yeah, 3 years 75 would probably get him here.
And that wouldn't kill you. Like it just wouldn't.
It wouldn't kill you if you would take the team option.
Yeah.
And if he's like awesome, then and like improves a ton and does turn into Kawhi from the paw to the claw, then great. But yeah,
great.
These scenarios, especially like for a guy like Patrick Williams, they so rarely ever happen.
Because Andrew, who was the last free agent that the Thunder put in an offer for?
Was it CJ Miles?
I think so. I think that's the only one. Wasn't he was on the Jazz at the time, right?
Yeah.
And
they matched.
Would have been cool also.
I mean, yeah, I think.
Honestly, at that time.
At that time, yes. Yes, it would have been. That would have been cool. But just like to keep in mind for Thunder fans that like start to get like, I wouldn't put any eggs in the basket of the paw. Okay. I just wouldn't do it. There are things about it that I really like. There are things about it that make me question whether it's actually true. And the fact that he's a restricted free agent makes me feel like it's not going to happen at all.
Yeah.
So Sam Vecini, good friend of the program, put out a mock draft this morning in which he has the Thunder taking Tidjane Saloon at 12, a 6'9" forward, which I've seen him as high as like 5, I think, in mock drafts, and then as low as this at this point. So like, there's a chance that, and I can't remember who wrote it. Somebody wrote that they didn't think that he would make it past 8. So who knows? The mock drafts are so wildly different right now, which makes it very, very interesting. But thoughts on, you have any Saloon thoughts or thoughts on mock draft at all?
I would say early in the process, he was one of those guys that I just kind of, I watched a little bit and I was like, I do not want like taking this type of player for this Thunder team seems insane. Like, how is he going to get any consistent minutes in, let's say, the next 2 years? Right. Like, if it feels like such a long-term play, similar to the Ousmane Dieng pick.
Yeah.
But the further I've gone in this process, the more I've just looked at all these other players that people are bringing up, and also thinking like, how are they getting minutes either? So I've kind of swung back around where it's like, why not take the biggest swing? Like if this was the biggest swing that they could take, like why not? Who cares? Because is Jared McCain, who like I like Jared McCain a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He has the same physical profile as Jared Bayless. He has like a 6'3.5" wingspan, 5 inches shorter than Cason Wallace's wingspan. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is he really getting on the court next year, even though everyone calls him like NBA ready? Like, wouldn't you just rather have Cason Wallace in a lot of those minutes? And like, we barely can find enough minutes for Cason. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, as I start going through these names, unless they're a big, I'm just like, I just don't know if they're really going to be getting minutes anyways. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of went into this draft process thinking like, okay, let's start looking at like the NBA ready guys. I'm not going to worry about age as much anymore. But the further I've gone on, it's just like, yeah, maybe just take the swing. Even though like Saloon, similar to Usman Jang back in the day, just doesn't totally vibe with what I typically like in a prospect. Just because he seems so raw in moments, like so raw, like so far away from playing regular minutes in the NBA. But he does theoretically fill this big role that we've been talking about, and
Yeah.
so if they went that way, I would understand it. I would also not expect to see him. It wouldn't change. I would still want Patrick Williams in that scenario because I just don't think Saloon is going to be playing regular minutes for any NBA team unless it's like Washington or something for
Yeah.
several years. I mean, he's going to be I would assume he's going to be a G League guy for a while.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not. I
Really?
Yeah. The thing about Saloon that's different than him because he's like the trilogy of like the Poku Jang,
Yeah.
group. He just has an aggressiveness about him that both Poku and Jang didn't have. Like there was like a passivity that existed with those two where they would just like disappear at times, or when they attack the basket, like clear lane to the hoop, like it's either like a soft dunk or they're just like laying it up in there.
Yeah.
He like attack the basket and like he can be really aggressive, and defensively he's pretty physical. So I don't know. He may be a G leaguer. That may be true.
You really believe like a guy? Would you agree that he's raw?
Um, I actually, I don't think he's as. I mean, I guess it depends on like what are you defining as raw? Like, what do you
I
mean?
mean, just the idea of an 18-year-old coming in and getting minutes on the Thunder, who has,
It definitely. I mean, I don't. I mean, yeah, I hear you. I definitely hear you. It would be unlikely that he would play like a lot of minutes, but it's hard for me to say. I honestly just don't know. Like, I honestly just don't know. Like once you get him into the program, there've been a lot of guys that like through the years that I have like said like this is for sure a G League player, and they have played, a
yeah,
lot of minutes. It's like I just don't know. But I do like the profile. Like an aggressive forward that defends, like like all the character stuff really checks out too, apparently. Um there are a lot of boxes that he checks, and Vicini and I have been talking about him for like several weeks now, and like he'll just like randomly message me sometimes to be like Saloon is such a Thunder guy. So I don't know.
I mean, I'm just like some of his stats from this season. He finished 58% of his attempts at the rim. He shot
Yeah.
8 of 40 from mid range. He is not a shooter.
Yeah.
He's 18. Like, maybe I get like the theory there, but
Hmm.
like he is not. I do not buy that he is coming in and contributing to a team that was a number one seed.
it it's very unlikely. I mean, it's very unlikely that anybody would, like you said. It's very unlikely. It's just hard.
Right.
I'm just saying I just don't know. Like I really don't know. Like a lot of people are talking about Deron Holmes too. Like would Deron Holmes for sure come and play minutes for the Thunder? Like I don't know. Like I just don't know. Um, but he's at least interesting, and he plays with an aggressiveness that both Poku and Oos didn't. So Like I think that there's and Vicini has told me many times that he likes him a lot better than he liked Jang in the draft.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Again, I would totally get it, but
Yeah,
this is because I have kind of changed my position on taking like a project or not.
yeah,
So I'm open to taking another project. So I would be fine with it. But
yeah. It would not surprise me if they took another project. It wouldn't surprise me. However, I do think that especially with the new CBA, the way that it's structured, and especially in this draft, where I do feel like there are a lot of guys that are good role players that you could have, and the fact that who are you sure that you can afford to pay a guy like Isaiah Joe? With
yeah,
what you may demand, and like when are you going to pull that lever? Are you going to do it this summer? You're going to wait till next summer? What are you going to do? Um, because in that case, if you're just like, man, I just don't know that we can afford to pay Isaiah Joe. If his agent's demanding 25 million, this is just all hypothetical. I don't know. Would it be better to have somebody waiting in the wing, you know, to play like a Devin Carter? Devin Carter is so interesting to me. He obviously does not have like the height profile of a guy that you'd want. He's 6'3", and I think in some places measured at 6'2". But like he is a crazy rebounder for his size. Like a crazy rebounder. He averaged 8.7 rebounds per game. He
yeah.
was 19, 8, and almost 4 assists per game with a block per game. Like there's something really special about that guy. Like I just wonder if he could be like a Josh Hart type of player for you. Where he's like,
Also important, he has almost a 6'9" wingspan.
yeah, he is so impressive. He is such an impressive player. In fact, he averaged more rebounds per game than almost everybody that's going to be selected in the first round outside of Khalil Ware and Zach Edey.
Yeah.
Like more than Jerron Holmes, more than anybody that's going to go in the lottery. So like he's one that I would be willing to take, at 12 and just say if you're just unsure about being able to keep everybody. I think Carter is like, and he's a competitor. Like he checks a lot of boxes where I know you don't want to get smaller. Like I know that. And honest, like if he was 6'8", he'd be the 5th pick probably. Um, but he's one that I just wonder about. Like, do you?
He's probably the one player where you could sell me on him contributing in his rookie season.
Yeah,
Um, because he's already 22. He has the wingspan. By the way, Ben Pfeiffer, I had been wondering about this. He went back and looked through all of Presti's picks.
yeah,
29 of his 32 picks, which includes Dort, had at least a +4 wingspan.
yeah.
Do you know who the 3 exceptions were, Andrew?
Giddy.
Yes.
Um, Cole Aldrich. Did Cole Aldrich have
No, but another big man.
McGarry?
Yeah.
Um, Cam Payne?
Good guess. Trey Mann,
Oh,
similar
Trey, man.
type
Yeah,
player. Yeah.
funny.
So he
I
was just he
oh,
was listing off some of the guys projected in that range who
mhm,
aren't +4. Obviously, there are exceptions, but like Filipowski, Johnny Furphy,
yeah,
Buzelis, Jared McCain, Isaiah
mhm,
Collier, Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepard. Those are all guys who wouldn't match that, even though there are exceptions. But I just thought that
yeah,
was interesting
yeah,
because you look at someone like Devin Carter versus Jared McCain,
mhm,
and it's like, yeah, I could envision that a lot more easily
yeah.
because
I
of his wingspan.
I like McCain a lot too.
I do too. I just don't know if I like him on this team.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. I think I prefer Carter over McCain.
Yeah.
Um, and I just like that idea, and I think that he'll likely be there at 12. Like I like him better than De Silva even, and I know De Silva's 6'9",
Hmm.
but I just love the aggressiveness. I mean, he averaged almost over 3.5 rebounds more per game than De Silva,
That's
and
pretty wild.
De Silva's a year older. Not that a year older means you get more rebounds, but just like also factoring in that he's a year older. Like he's 23 years old. Like, are the Thunder going to draft a 23-year-old? I think is a question that I have. That doesn't rebound, is not going to be a great defender out of the gate, that people say won't be ready to play in the NBA. Like people have been saying that about him. He's 23.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to be ready?
And Devin Carter, son of a former NBA player. It's always nice.
Yeah, Anthony Carter. Who's he coaching for? He's a Timberwolves? No, he played for the Timberwolves. I don't know. Memphis?
Okay, Andrew, are you ready to move on?
Yeah, let's take a break and then let's move on.
He's an assistant coach for the Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies, okay. I had the second guess right. All right, we'll be right back. And we're back after that quick break. Alex is gonna walk us through an exercise that I think is going to be very, very fun. We're essentially just gonna knock on every door that we can for players to trade for.
Doors, Andrew. There are some doors that I have remained shut. I did not open them. But basically what we're going to do is for the next 3 weeks, we're going to go through 2 divisions per week. I've gone through every roster in those divisions and picked out some potential trade targets / free agent guys. This is not an exhaustive list. So, we're going to talk about the Pacific or the Northwest Division today. Going to talk about Portland. I'm not going to bring up Scoot Henderson. I don't think it's relevant for the Thunder. Same with Shady Sharp. There's some guys who are just like, it just doesn't make sense to talk about. The other rule I gave myself is I try to only choose players who, if they were acquired by the Thunder, you could very easily see them breaking like an 8 or 9 man rotation. So we're not going to be talking about end of the bench guys for other teams. So like a Zeke Naji, for instance, we won't be mentioning him today. It's entirely possible that the Thunder could trade for a player that ends up, on the back half of their bench or sign a player in free agency. I don't know if those players are really moving the needle one way or the other. We could still get excited about them, but we're not going to talk about them today. As we go through, there may be some names that I don't mention that you're like, why did you not bring up them? If there's someone that you really just want us to talk about, you can let me know. I will let you know right now. I did not pick anyone from the Clippers or Lakers. I just couldn't really bring myself to bring up anyone. Like, yeah, you could talk about Terrence Mann or like Zubats, but like the Clippers need them so bad.
So bad.
Like, what is the scenario where they would really trade them to the Thunder? I just could not imagine it.
They refused to put Terrence Mann in the deal for
a James Harden trade. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they can't afford to trade him. And then like Austin Reeves, like the same deal for the Lakers. Like they can't afford to trade Austin Reeves for anything but like a player that's better than Austin Reeves. And the Thunder aren't going to give them that.
So we're going to go through all these names. I have 4 categories. Andrew's going to rate each player on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being bad, 5 being good. And I have also done the same. And at the end of this 3 weeks, I will combine our scores and come up with an overall averaged out list of targets. Okay. And then we'll reveal that. Won't that be exciting? So let's go through the categories. First category is fit. And I'm mostly thinking about on-court fit. I told Andrew for these first 2 categories, I want him to be as objective as possible. Okay, so try to imagine like the best case scenario. One of the players we're going to talk about today, Robert Williams, who was missed entire last season. I told Andrew, I want you to think positive. Imagine that Robert Williams has come back. He's playing like, let's say 50 to 60 games. Those are his best seasons in Boston when talking about on-court fit.
Yeah.
Next category, impact. So how big of an impact could it potentially be to the Thunder to bring this particular player, slot them into this roster, go into next year's playoffs? Like how big of an impact could they potentially have? And then these last 2 categories, you can be a little bit more subjective. The first one is the contract, because I think we all have different opinions on like what kind of contracts matter. Like one thing I was thinking about is someone like John Collins, who theoretically fits a lot of like Thunder ideas. He only has 2 years left on his contract. So some people might say, oh, that's great. It expires right when the big money kicks in. For me, one thing I think about is opportunity cost, because if you bring in someone for the next 2 years who hasn't been easy to move in the past. Atlanta got nothing for him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's making $27 million a year. That's probably the only like quote unquote big move you're going to get to make over this 2-year window period.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about it that way, maybe you feel differently because like if you do bring in John Collins, well then you can't bring in like a lot of these other guys that we're talking about. So there is some opportunity cost when it comes to some of these contracts.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a free agent. Like on the one hand, you could say, "Oh, that's bad because we're probably going to have to overpay him, give him a big contract up front." You could also look at the other way where it's like, well, for these next 2 years, it doesn't really matter. And then by the time the cap goes up, if I have a very movable deal for someone like, Malik Monk or something, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal because you could get off that money because it will look like a really good deal by that point. So you can go either way on those. That's why it's a little more subjective. And then the final category is just like how realistic is this? And this is where you can bring in all your subjectivity. So if you want to knock Robert Williams down because he's always injured, you can give him a 1 for that. I don't care. So, are you ready, Andrew?
I'm so ready. I will also say I will be as open-minded as possible during this exercise because I know
Okay.
some people get really frustrated whenever I talk about acquiring
Oh,
players.
yeah. I mentioned to you one thing I would like you to do is when I mention a player,
Uh-huh.
just say 1 or 2 positive things about imagining them on the Thunder. Okay,
Okay.
just like something good that they could bring to the team. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
going to remain open-minded during this exercise, just so that I don't make people mad because I understand it, but um, anyways, some of that just comes from me. I don't know. Never mind. Let's just go. Let's just
Okay.
go.
Here we go. So we're going to start the Northwest Division with the Portland Trailblazers. First name up, Andrew, DeAndre Ayton.
Dominate.
That's right, dominating. You have anything nice to say about him?
He is big. He
Mhm.
eventually got his car out of an icy driveway.
That's true. Okay. How would you rank his fit on the Thunder?
I would rank it at a 1.
Okay. What do you think about his potential impact?
If the Thunder acquired him, I think the impact, you'd have to play him a lot. You'd have to find ways to play him next to Chet because of like the contract and everything. So if this somehow happened, he'd
Yes.
probably have an impact at like a 3.
Okay. His contract, he has 2 years remaining, 34 million and 35.6 million.
It's bad, but it's because of the length. It's not crippling. So I would say it's like a 3.
Okay. And then overall, how realistic do you think this is?
This is a 1.
All right.
They're just personality wise, like there just is no chance. I sat at the table when the Thunder played the Suns with a somebody that worked for the Suns, and they did not have a lot of nice things to say about DeAndre Ayton. I'll say that.
Next up, Jeremy Grant, also from the Portland Trailblazers, 6'7", 210. This one's pretty easy to say nice things. He can shoot. He's been on the team before.
Yeah, there's
He has.
familiarity with him. They developed him into the player that he is today.
He actually has very similar measurements to Patrick Williams.
Yeah,
kind of.
He's like basically a good Patrick Williams.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so fit.
I think the fit is like a 4. I think that obviously the ability to shoot, to be able to create off the dribble. He's got an aggressiveness about him. Defensively, he's very switchy. The good thing about him is that like he doesn't have to be the best defender on the Thunder. He can be the 3rd best defender on the Thunder in the starting lineup, or even the 4th. And like he's still going to be very helpful to you. And he has he's got the size and length that you want. And so there's a lot to like there. Offensively, he doesn't quite fit this new age Thunder, which is why he's not a 5. If he was like a better passer and a better rebounder, it would be like a no-brainer. But yeah, no, the fit would be good. I mean, you could slide him in the starting lineup immediately, and I think it would make the Thunder better.
And how about that impact, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's like a 5. I think it would be a 5. I think that he would help a lot. I think having him at the rim would be unbelievable. And then offensively, he's just like another guy that can put the ball in the hoop.
Now his contract, 28.9 next year, 32 the year after, 34.2, 26-27, and then a player option for 36.4 in 27-28. So
Yeah,
4 years left.
this is a one. It's just the contract length is too long. And that's in where I said Ayton is not killer. Well, Ayton's is bigger. Why is it? It's the years. It's the fact that it goes into 26-27 and then a player option 27-28.
Yeah.
It's just the contract is too long, and it would be detrimental. It would make the Thunder have to make really difficult choices with the guys on the team now. Like they couldn't keep the guys that you would want, and perhaps would have trouble keeping, even the core of the team together if you made a deal like this.
So how realistic is Jeremy Grant, Andrew?
I'd say a one. I just don't see it happening.
Okay. Moving on, another Blazer, Malcolm Brogdon, 6'4", 229. What do you think about Broggy Dog's fit on the Thunder?
I actually don't hate this because I do think they could use another on-ball creator off the bench like Brogdon, who can shoot past dribble. He plays rhythmically. He's 6'4", so he's not tiny. He's pretty stout. Quite a bit heavier than Jeremy Grant, even, who's quite a bit taller than him. So I like the idea of a guy like that coming off the bench. I know that we don't really want more 6'3", 6'4" guys coming off the bench. I get that. But I do think he's definitely a whole lot different than a Casey Wallace or an Isaiah Joe or an Aaron Wiggins, because he can really set the table. And it would
also has a 6'11" wingspan. People are interested.
Wow, there you go. I like him. I think he's a good player that could fit with the Thunder. Yes.
Okay. Well, how would you rate that, Andrew? 1 to 5?
The impact or the fit?
Yeah.
Fit. That's a 4.
Okay. And impact?
I worry about the injury history is like the number one thing that I think about with Brogdon. And so I think you have to like knock it down a level. I'd say probably like a 3 would be the impact of a guy like Brogdon on this team. Because, I mean, he's not going to play all 82 for sure.
Yeah.
And then, like, is he going to be really what it comes down to? Is he healthy in the playoffs? Because he would have certainly played in the playoffs for the Thunder this year. But, like, is he healthy during the playoffs? I think is a huge question. And it's a roll of the dice.
His contract, he has a $22.5 million expiring contract going into next season.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's great. It's tradable. If you want to trade him at the deadline, it's a nice way to fill space. You may even be able to get an asset in acquiring him. If like you were just hey, wow, Blazers, we will take him into space. And if you'll give us a protected pick, like we'll do that for you. We'll just take $22.5 million off your plate. And if you're the Blazers, you have enough young guys that it would probably be nice for you to take that money off the ownership group. Because the thing about being a young team, it's like you can't be a young team and be really expensive. Like you can't be a tanking team and be really expensive. It's just like bad business to do that.
Yeah, they definitely are going to have to move off some of these guys.
Yeah.
Because they are dangerously close to the tax going into next season.
Yeah.
But I still do think they could probably get value for Brogdon.
Maybe.
There'll be some team. Okay, so how would you rank his contract? How would you rate it?
Oh, it's a 5. Yeah, it's like it's one that you would like to. It's one that you would honestly like to have, because again, like you could trade it at the deadline for something else.
And it's possible if you did like him long term. I know he's getting a little bit older, but I don't think he's going to be making a crazy amount of money on his next deal.
No.
So how realistic, Andrew? 1 to 5?
Probably a 2. It's pretty unrealistic. It would be very surprising if like you woke up, one morning and you saw on your phone from Shams Charania that the Thunder have acquired Malcolm Brogdon. It would be very weird.
Yeah, we talk about like investing a draft pick in a guard and like, how are we going to find minutes? Like the idea of investing $22.5 million in another guard.
Yeah.
That is going to kind of limit your options to fill the big positions does seem kind of strange.
Are you going to tell me what you rated these at?
No, I'm going to reveal it. I'll reveal it at the end, Andrew.
At the end of this podcast?
We'll
Or at
see
the
how many
very
we get
end.
through. We'll see how many we get through, Andrew. We only have
Okay.
9
All right.
minutes. Okay, next up, Robert Williams, another Blazer, 6'9", 237.
Yeah,
What do you think about his fit?
I love it. I love his fit with the
Mm,
Thunder because of his passing as a
yeah,
big. He doesn't shoot it, which is definitely a huge knock against him because I do think that the Thunder like to have their bigs be able to shoot the ball from three. However, I do think that he's a guy that could fit with the Thunder because of the short roll passing and his ability to be kind of like a mini hub, a little bit like Jay Will is. Um, a healthy Robert Williams, love the fit. Love the fit. A 4. I really like it.
4. And what about his potential impact?
His impact would be massive for the Thunder. I think it's another 4. I think that he would come off the bench and help. Obviously, the biggest question with any sort of Robert Williams acquisition the is definitely his health. And it is a massive question mark where
It is
yeah,
massive.
yeah, it's great. And if you count on him to be your backup 5 all season, it's a little dicey. And he's also not giant. Like he's a big guy, but he's not massive. He's like Daniel Gafford, you know.
Yeah.
He's like a better Daniel Gafford is a kind of way to think about him.
His contract, 2 years left, 2.4, 13.3. How would you rate that?
12.4,
12.4. What did I say?
2.4.
That'd be a bargain
That'd be
right
crazy.
there.
The contract is a 5. It's like it is nothing. Like it would be amazing to have that contract on your books for trade purposes, but also just like he's not hurting you at all. The years are perfect. The money is very, very little.
Yeah,
It's
negligible. You could
it's
still bring in another big contract if you really wanted to.
yeah, it's ideal.
Okay, so how realistic, Andrew? 1 to 5.
I just don't have a feel at all for like what the Blazers think about him, you know,
Yeah,
which is probably more of a question than it is like would the Thunder have interest because of like the length of the contract and like his potential impact. I think like you could see them trading for a guy like that. But, like, do the Blazers value him too? Like they have him and Aiton, and then like there's a chance they could take a big in the draft.
yeah.
You know, I think Vecini
He had
has him.
Klingon mocked
Yeah,
to him.
has him going. Like if they took Klingon, that would be just like a signal that like, hey, you can probably go get Robert Williams,
Yeah,
and then like you could trade a future first for him. You know,
yeah,
you could trade a future protected first for him, and then I think he would help a tremendous amount. Um, like they in Boston they played him and Horford together a lot, and because of
mhm,
his if he's healthy, because of his quickness, you can play him and Chet together, and defensively, like there's a really nice match, and even offensively because of the passing that he possesses, like there's ways for it to work. So I mean I really like it. I really like the idea of a guy like that. There aren't many quote unquote traditional bigs that I like for this Thunder team, but Robert Williams is one of them.
okay. So how would you rate how realistic it is, Andrew? 1 to 5.
Probably a 2 still.
Okay.
I just have a hard time seeing them wanting to move off of him. Um,
Okay, let's move on to Denver. I only picked 2 names from Denver. First name, Michael Porter Jr., 6'10", 218.
hmm.
How would you rank MPJ's fit on the Thunder?
uh, he is not a rhythmic player per se, but like the
Mhm.
fit is probably like a 4.
Okay.
I mean, the fact that he is 6'10" and can shoot like he does, I don't think that there's really any roster that he would not fit on.
What about his overall impact?
It would be a 5 because he'd start for you
Whew, whew.
and he would be a massive upgrade. Like imagining him with the starters, if him and Chet spreading the floor for J Dub and an SGA would be crazy. Like it would be crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean the impact would be massive. I think if they had MPJ in there for Giddy, I think like their We're talking about them in the finals right now.
His contract next 3 years, 35.9, 38.3, 40.8 in 26-27.
It gets really complicated. But the fact that it does end in 26-27, it's just like, hey, Thunder ownership group, are you willing to be in the second apron for a year, basically? Like, are you
Yeah.
willing to do that? I don't know the answer to that.
And are you willing to potentially be in the tax the next 2 years? Because I'm assuming that would push them pretty close.
You
If
would have to,
especially if you're extending like any of Wiggins, Joe, or Giddey.
you probably have to do this deal knowing that like Wiggins is gone and potentially Isaiah Joe's gone.
Yeah.
Like that's what doing something like this would mean. So like the contract is probably a 2. Like it's not ideal. It doesn't really vibe with the direction the Thunder want to go. And you'd have to give up a lot to get Michael Porter Jr. on your team. Like,
yeah, because Denver is obviously they're right in the thick of it. They don't want to they're not giving him away. They need to replenish their rotation.
yeah.
If they're giving up MPJ. So
Honestly, if you're Denver, there's no way you do this deal if the player going back is not J-Dub. And like this is why
that sounds like a 1 for how realistic.
Yeah, there's just it. I mean, if you're the Nuggets, like why would you trade him for anything less than J-Dub?
I agree, but there were a lot of Nuggets fans after that Wolves series where he did not play well that were like, oh, maybe he's our ticket to, break him up into smaller pieces and figure something out. But I agree with you. I think that's hard to do.
Yeah, Giddey's not exactly a fit in Denver. Like if Giddey was like a great fit in Denver, then you could say like, yeah, Giddey, Isaiah Joe, and a first round pick, or like 2 or 3 first round picks is what it maybe would take.
Let's move on to KCP, who is an unrestricted free agent. What do you think about his overall fit?
The fit's great. I mean, he's a competitor. I'd say it's a 4. He's a high level competitor, good defensive player, good shooter. I mean, I think again, same with like MPJs. Like he fits on every roster. Like there's no roster he doesn't fit on.
And what do you think about his overall impact? Would he swing their fortunes?
I really don't think so because like he's not starting, because he's not like a big wing, and you're not starting him in front of Dort, so he's coming off the bench. And like I just don't know how much a 6'5" player for this team is going to come in and make an instant impact. So I maybe like a 3 or 2 or 3.
Okay,
probably a 3.
His contract, obviously, he's an unrestricted free agent. People think he's getting at least $20 million a year.
Yeah,
probably going to be a 4-year deal.
Yeah.
So at a baseline, probably 480. It could be more than that.
It's probably going to be more than that. It's probably like a 2. It's just not the kind of deal that you want on your books for a guy who's not a starter, in my opinion.
And who is getting up there a little bit.
Yeah.
He continues to age.
Every year, the guy gets older.
One of his weaknesses. Yeah, he's 31 right now.
Yeah. He's so good. I mean, he doesn't rely just so much on athleticism. Obviously, he does for defensively, but like he's gonna be a good player for a long time, I think.
And then, how realistic is he?
I mean, it's a 1. I just don't see the Thunder making an offer, and I also don't see him like looking the Thunder's way, because if you're a KCP, I don't think that you're gonna go to a team and be a bench player.
Okay, next up, we're moving to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're starting with Naz Reid. Now, you might think that sounds crazy, but if they can't find a cat deal they like, one way to shed a little bit of money is by trading Naz Reid, who has a player option next summer. So he's essentially a $14 million expiring contract, after which you're probably going to need to pay him at least $20 million a year. So if you are the Timberwolves, you're worried about your long-term financial flexibility, you could keep him for this next year, but are you really going to be able to pay him next summer? That's why this is even being brought up. What do you think about his fit?
It's probably a 4. I mean, he's a great fit. I think he can play your backup center. He can play next to Chet. There's a lot of really good things about Naz, for sure.
What about his overall impact?
Probably another 4. I mean, he'd be very
I would
impactful
agree.
for this team because I mean they just really need that upgrading that big spot in a substantial way where he can play next to Chet is massive.
And what do you think about his contract? The idea of you get him for cheap this year, but then you're going to have to. He's also going to be an unrestricted free agent, so there's always a possibility. And I should mention this: like you could lose these guys. Like someone could come over the top, give him stupid money, and you just lose him
Yeah,
completely.
it's probably a 3 for that. Just because in like the opposite way that we've been talking, and that it's going to be hard for him to be a sustainable part of your future.
And so, how realistic is Nas Reed? 1
It's
to
a
5.
it's a 2 probably. I think that they would probably move off of Towns before they moved off of Nas. And he is such a beloved figure in the community that I think that it makes it even harder to deal him.
Yeah, I will say, Andrew, that was the first player of everyone we've talked about where our final score was the exact same. Every other
Oh,
one has
really?
been slightly
Wow,
different.
interesting.
Okay, next up, unrestricted free agent Kyle Anderson for the
Yeah.
Timberwolves, 6'9", 230. What do you think about his fit?
Oh man. Uh,
Oh,
he does thundery things for sure, but he doesn't shoot and he doesn't look to score. I mean, it's a little bit like acquiring it's a little bit like acquiring Gordon Hayward if he didn't have the ability to shoot at all. Like so I don't I can see I think it's probably I'll put a 3. Um
okay.
but I don't love he does thundery things, but like not being able to shoot is such a huge detriment. Um because then like you have to like really design things for Kyle Anderson. It's like, man, I really don't want to design things for Kyle Anderson, you know. But like there's definitely a something about his game that is simpatico with the Thunder for sure.
Mm-hmm. What about his overall impact?
I mean, his size is really good, but again, do you want both of your 6'8", 6'9" players to not be able to shoot the ball, but also be like really good passers? He's definitely like he's almost like a lesser version of Josh in a lot of ways.
Well, but in other ways, like he's obviously much better defensively than Josh. So
He's definitely better. Um, he's definitely better, but like I just if you want
he's
Thunder fans to just
less of an offensive player though than Josh, which
yeah, you
is
want. I mean, he will get the ball by the rim and have like the ability to have an open layup, and he will dribble out to survey his options. I mean, the level of frustration that fans feel about Giddey, I think, may triple with Kyle Anderson. Like, I think if you're just looking for Thunder fans to beat their head against a brick wall, just acquire Kyle Anderson.
yeah, he shot 23% from 3 this season. Doesn't get to the line. Shot 46% from the field. Yeah.
Offensively, it's just, I mean, he's just a lesser Giddey. So impact, I think, is like a 2 probably. Like I just don't see him having just a massive impact on this team because they already play the way that Kyle plays without really needing Kyle to be here.
And what about his contract?
I mean, I think you could. I mean, his contract is probably a 4. Like you could probably get him on a really nice deal. Where if like you thought that he was going to be a part of the team moving forward, you could probably get him on a 4-year deal that is 10 million maybe. Maybe
Maybe.
less than that. I don't know.
What was his last deal? What did he make? He was making about 9.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be 31 entering the season.
Yeah.
So he is starting to get up there. How realistic do you think Kyle Anderson is slow-mo on the Thunder?
Well, I just wonder, and he talked about this after the season. Like he has a special needs son that is doing really well in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder if he just wants to just stay in Minnesota and they pay him whatever they can. But the problem with that is the Timberwolves are a mess financially. And so he may just have to leave just because of that in general. Or he'd have to take less money to stay there. So it's probably a 3. Like it's going to be a possibility because the Thunder do have the ability to pay somebody like that. But I would probably if I could give it a 2.5, I'd give it a 2.5.
Okay. Next up, maybe our last one for today. Nikhil Alexander-Walker.
God, this takes so much longer than you think it would take.
I know. I think what we'll do is I'll have you do the rest of these on the Fry Pod because you can run through these with the guys, so you can score them, and then
Do we have
next week?
I guess we need to get through these before July.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or do you want to do? You want to do special episodes? We can talk about this after the show.
Yeah, we can talk about this after so. But we'll stop here for today.
Okay.
But then we'll find other ways to do this. I mean, if the problem is we're gonna keep getting scuttlebutt, so we got to talk about the scuttlebutt. But yes, we might have to do some little bonus episodes to get through all these.
Yeah.
Okay, Nikhil Alexander-Walker. What do you think about his fit?
Oh, it's a 5.
Jay's cousin.
Yeah,
wow,
it's great. The chemistry is there. He's a Thunder player. He's got length. He can shoot. He can pass. He's a great defender. He'd be amazing for the Thunder. Yeah.
And what about his overall impact?
I mean, he'd come off the bench and be their best player off the bench, I think. So I think it's like a 4. Like he would be really good for them. He doesn't fit like the 6'9" profile that you need, but
right,
boy, he would be really nice.
I'm assuming he has a crazy wingspan. Actually, not as crazy as I thought. 6'9.5".
But it's
his contract is +4. His contract, he is a $4.3 million expiring contract.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to pay him next summer. He's probably gonna get a decent deal if he continues to play like he did this year.
Yeah. I'd probably rate it a 3 just because of the team control stuff. I think like it makes it really tough.
And how realistic is Nikhil Alexander-Walker?
I just don't think they trade him. I think that he makes being that small of a contract. I just don't think they. I think it's a 1. I just don't. He's too valuable to them.
I would agree. Even though they're going to have to pay him or do something next summer.
Yeah,
they don't have to this year, so they can buy themselves a little bit of time. Okay, so we didn't get through the whole Northwest Division. Actually, do you have time? Let's just run through the Jazz. There's only 3 players, and then we can at least say we got through one division.
Sure.
Okay. John Collins, fit.
3. He's got the size. He's super athletic and can shoot.
Impact. John Collins on the Thunder.
He would be a bench player, so he's coming off the bench for you. He's probably a 3. I mean, he's a really productive player. I mean, he's the size of a player the Thunder don't have. He's a guy that offensively gives you a lot of juice. Defensively, he's not as bad as some people say he is. And I think if you're playing for the Thunder, he could be a little bit insulated. Like he's not going to be any worse than Josh, and the Thunder had a top 5 defense this past year. So I mean, I don't see him just like killing your defense.
His contract, he makes $26.6 million this year, and then has a player option for $26.6 in 25-26.
It's a 4. I mean, it's not going to kill you. It's a lot for John Collins, but it's not going to kill you. And he may opt out, which might make it even a 3. But he'll probably opt into that player option for. Is he getting $26 million? I don't know. Probably not.
How realistic is this, John Collins to the Thunder?
That's probably a 2.
2. Wow.
It's just hard for me to see them acquiring John Collins and that being like the thing that they do this summer.
Second to last one, Colin Sexton. We all know him. Fit on the Thunder.
It's probably a 2. I don't love the fit. He's a guy that needs the ball in his hands. He can be amazing and he can be awful. Like he is hot and cold. I really do like him as a player. I just don't see him being a Thunder guy, especially with his mentality. Like I think that he thinks that he needs to be like one of the guys. And like if you tell him like, hey, you're like our 7th best player.
Yeah.
Like I just don't know that there's a fit there, for Colin here. I just don't see it.
What do you think his impact would be though?
It'd probably be like if the Thunder acquired him today, it'd probably be a 4 because like he's a good player. Like he's definitely an impactful player and he would impact the team quite a bit. he he would take away touches from guys like J-Dub, which is just funny
Sure.
to say, but like he would do that.
What about his contract? 18.4, 19.2.
It's really, I mean, it's great. It's probably a 5. It's like one
Ooh.
of those that you'd like to have because you can trade it because it's like not a crazy amount. Um, and it's only 2 years, and so it's not killing you.
Right.
And so like if he's hurting, if he's a guy that's not helping you as much as you would have hoped, like the contract is going to be gone soon.
Okay, how realistic is it? Colin Sexton.
A 1. Like I just
Wow.
don't see it. I just don't see them acquiring a high usage ball handler. Like
That was
that's
probably our funniest one because we ended up with the exact same score, but our individual scores are all different.
oh really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, final one, Andrew. Final one
Uh-huh.
of the pod.
Hmm.
Lauri Markkinen. What do you
Yeah,
think about his fit?
a 5. I mean, like the
I would
fit
agree.
is it's like unbelievable. He's 7 feet tall. He can play small ball center minutes for you if you want him to. He's can shoot off movement,
Good rebounder.
good rebounder, pretty good defender too. Like he's obviously ideal. It's the reason why everybody talks about him all the time. He's a great fit.
What do you think his impact would be?
Be a 5. I mean, he's starting on your team. He's stretching the floor. Yeah, you'd be amazing in every way.
His contract, $18 million expiring. You're probably going to have to give him a max next
Yeah,
summer
yeah,
in order to keep him. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent,
yeah,
so he could go anywhere he wants.
yeah. It's not good. It's this is a he is you're trading for him as a part of your core, and you will have to probably choose between him and J Dub. You know, it could be the case.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a 2. I mean, it's not a good situation. It's not a situation I don't think. It's not a situation I think the Thunder would want to put themselves in.
And the final score of today, Andrew, how realistic is it for the Thunder to acquire Lauri Markkinen?
I think I think it's a 2. I won't say 1 just to not make people mad. But I just do not see it happening. I think that he's going to get an extension from Utah ultimately, and that he will be a part of the Jazz core. Like the Jazz are building something, like they're trying to like build from the middle. Like I don't think they want to tear it down all the way.
Yeah. That was
Um
the first one that we've had the exact same scores on every single category. That was the
oh
only
wow.
one. Yeah.
Wow. How about that?
He still ranks very highly. So we got through one division. That's
Wow.
something.
In an hour and 7 minutes. But
I
some of
know.
that was some scuttle.
A lot of that was Scuttle.
Yeah.
Our highest rated player after day one, Robert Williams, coming in at number 1.
Wow.
Lowry, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Naz Reid, number 3.
Yeah.
Malcolm Brogdon, number 4.
Weird.
And 5th is tied Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Colin Sexton.
Interesting.
So we'll keep adding to this, and I'll eventually just post all the numbers so people will be able to see them. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so maybe you guys can do the Pacific Division on Friday. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
Got to get through these, Andrew.
Gotta get through these. Okay. Let's go to some super chats. Do you have time, or if you need to go, I can do the super chats.
I need to go, but I haven't heard my son crying yet, so he's apparently sleeping in. So
Okay. GT New. He says, "Give me freedom, give me fire, give me Lauri Markkinen, or I retire." I think this is a Metallica reference.
well, he's going to retire from his job.
He's going to retire from your own job. I hate to tell you that you may be going in for early retirement. Thank you for the super chat. El Sombra Regio 7. But you hate the Hartenstein $100 million for 5-year descending contract with Dilly off the bench as upgrades while keeping all of our core.
So the rumor is actually $100 million 4 years for Hartenstein.
Yeah.
Which is very funny to think about because everyone saw that, and I think a lot of the reaction was like, "Wow, that's a lot of money." Isn't it crazy to think that that's what the Steven Adams contract was like 8 years ago?
Yeah, it is crazy. Hartenstein is a really good player, and
Yeah.
I just don't know that you can pay a backup $25 million a year.
So this is my issue with like Jared Allen, who's obviously a better player than Isaiah Hartenstein, but like if you think the Thunder believe Chet is a 5, which I think like everything they've said has suggested that.
He is. He played the 82 games. Actually 82 plus 15, he told me.
So if you believe that, I just don't think you can allocate that much cap to a backup center. I want a backup center. I do not want to spend 25 plus million on a backup center.
Yeah, I don't either. I just don't think you can do that, especially with you can get a backup center for cheap. Like you can't.
Yeah. Now, if they were changing their whole philosophy and all of a sudden Chet's a 4, then yeah, all these ideas make more sense. But there's been no indication that that's the case. So that's why I kind of write these guys off when I hear. These
I don't think. I think even questioning it means that you didn't watch the Thunder all season. Like if you're questioning whether he is a 4 or a 5 today, you've lost your mind. Like and you are only living in basketball imagination world. Like you're not actually watching the games. Like if you truly believe that he's a 4, like that
or just listening to them. I mean, the fact that the J. Will Chet pairing played so few minutes.
Yeah.
This year, like they had.
Presti said it. He said, we played 2% of our minutes with double bigs. And doing that, we ranked top 5 in defense. Why are they going? They're not going to change that. Presti said it in his press conference 2 weeks ago. Like he said it out loud to the entire fan base. And if you actually go and listen to it, there's no way that you can come away from that thinking that he is going to be a 4. There's zero chance. Zero chance. It's crazy that people still think that. Like it's insane to me. It just means you're not paying attention.
Again, would love a backup big. Still want that position.
They need
to pay $25 million.
Yeah, they need a backup big man for sure. And then Hotspot Casino says we should trade Case and Wallace and get Jared McCain and make another trade to get another pick in the draft. We need a real sharpshooter. I don't think you're trading Case and Wallace. Case and Wallace is such a great fit for this team. And we don't know what he can become as an offensive player. So like they're not doing that. They're not.
I will say that's the only scenario where I'm even interested in talking about Jared McCain, because I just don't think he is so small. Like Jared Bayless was a tiny NBA player.
Yeah.
For him to have a 5-inch difference in wingspan with Case and Wallace. Like, that is huge. And I get that he is a good shooter, but like he feels more like Seth Curry type of player to me.
Yeah.
Than like impactful the way Case and Wallace is. And
to be like, it took a while for Seth Curry to get his footing in the league too.
Yeah.
Like it was not a seamless fit for him. It took a while. Sombar Reggio. Sorry, I wasn't really going at you, Mr. Sombar Reggio 7. He says, defending my honor, I do believe Chet is a 5. I also like Hart. Like I think I like him too. He'd be.
I like Jared Allen. I think they're all really good players, but the team's philosophy has told us that like they're not going to invest that much in a backup big because they believe they have their 35 minute per game center.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that I think. Yeah, and I wasn't going at you. There are just lots of conversations going around online about whether Chet's a 4 or 5, and it makes no sense to me. And I know that El Somber Reggio, a longtime listener, doesn't think that. I know that. Yeah. Okay. This was fun. Thank you, Alex. Thank you to everybody for listening. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.